Welcome, everyone. Tonight is the October 18th, 2022 meeting of the Carrboro Town Council. Glad to see you here. We have a busy agenda tonight, so we're going to get right to it. And first, we're going to do what we usually do, which is welcome our Poet Laureate, Fred Joyner, to come up to the podium. Welcome, Fred.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Good to see you all. Buenos noches. First of all, I wanted to just give a little report. Thanks for the West End Poetry Festival. We had a great time, a great workshop, and a good gathering. I think at some point, Liza, the new poet laureate, and I will read the community poem that was generated out of all of us in the community. Tonight, though, I'm going to read from this collection of poems. It's called All the Songs We Sing. It's the 25th anniversary of the Carolina African American Writers Collective. This area is tremendously blessed with quite a few, many African American writers. Many of us know Jackie Shelton Green, but she's kind of like the tip of the spear. There's a lot of writers here and a lot of Black writers here. So I just wanted to call attention to that. This is a poem that I was thinking about. I was flipping through this book this week, and I was this weekend actually, and this poem jumped out at me. It's called Rise. It's by a poet named Cynthia M. Gary. We are many. We are one. Together we rose above the sun. From cotton fields to hilltop plains, from bare feet to subway trains. We are many. We are one. Together we rose above the sun. When we were jailed, cursed, and beaten, we rose and stood proud. When we were raped and unwritten, we were not silent, we sang out loud. We are many, we are one. Together we rose above the sun. The day is now, the time has come, the chains have not been broken. Our struggle and our song, our work is not done. Do not rest, do not settle until every word has been spoken. We are many, we are one. Together, we will rise above the sun. I think that's a good meditation for the season that we are in and the season we are heading into. So, thank you.
Thank you very much, Fred. All right, I should have started this way, but it's always I'm too eager to get to Fred every time, but I should have just noted for everyone who may notice a not so new face at the table, but a rested face at the table, Anita Jones McNair, who is the town's race and equity officer, and tonight is sitting in as acting town manager. Our town manager is on some important family duty tonight. So Anita, thank you for being here tonight.
Absolutely.
Right, next up, so we have Veterans Day is coming up upon us pretty soon here, and Barbara has wanted to share a resolution that she's going to introduce, and I'll turn it over to Barbara to do that.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll just. Good evening, everyone.
Hi.
This resolution, a resolution supporting Operation Greenlight for veterans was adopted by the Orange County Board of County Commissioners in September of this year, and so I am sharing it with you, Carrboro style. Whereas the people of Carrboro respect, admire, and appreciate the individuals who selfishly have served the United States of America in the armed forces by placing themselves in challenging or perilous situations, and Whereas the contributions and sacrifices of those individuals who served in the armed forces have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and ways of life that we enjoy in our local communities. And whereas Operation Greenlight is a nationwide initiative to support veterans and raise awareness about the challenges many veterans face in accessing benefits and services. Whereas approximately 70% of veterans experiencing homelessness also experience substance use disorders, and 50% live with mental illnesses such as post-traumatic stress disorder. And whereas approximately 200,000 service members transition to civilian communities annually, and an estimated 20% increase of service members will transition to civilian life in the near future. And whereas studies indicate that 44 to 72% of service members experience high levels of stress during transition from military to civilian life, and active service members transitioning from military service are at a high risk for suicide during their first year after military service. And whereas veterans continue to serve our communities in the American Legion, veterans of foreign wars, religious groups, community organizations, and civil service, and as county veteran service officers in 29 states to help fellow former service members access more than $52 billion in federal health, disability, and compensation benefits each year. And whereas the town of Carrboro seeks to join other communities through Operation Greenlight for Veterans to shine a light on the plight of veterans across the country who are having a hard time connecting with benefits after serving their country. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Carrboro Town Council declares the period from November 7th through Veterans Day, November 11th, 2022, to be a time to honor the service and sacrifice of individuals in uniform transitioning from active service. Be it further resolved that, in observance of Operation Greenlight, the town of Carrboro should display green lights on Carrboro Town Hall, and the town council encourages residents to participate by displaying a green light in a window of their place of business or residence from November 7th through November 11th. This is the 18th day of October 2022. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Barbara. Can I? Go ahead. Can I take that as a motion to adopt the resolution, Barbara?
It is a motion to adopt this resolution as read.
I will second.
Okay. Been seconded by Eleazar, I think, got in there first. Hard to call it at the line. So it's been moved by Barbara, seconded by Eleazar, that we adopt the resolution. Is there any discussion? Sammy?
Firstly, I just want to express gratitude for Barbara to bringing this for the council. I think it is egregious that veterans who sacrifice themselves and go into the military service then come back and are not given benefits that they are promised and deserve so often. I think that it's right for us to speak out against that. I did have one concern in regard to this resolution, and it regards the way in which I feel, unfortunately, there's a narrative and even a myth in terms of what the armed services does for us in our communities in terms of, our freedoms and ways of life. And I believe that the misallocation of resources that goes to the armed forces is a waste of money that could better be spent supporting communities. And I say this not disparaging the veterans because they go into it with their full heart. But I do say it being critical of the armed forces because I don't believe that it's important for us to put the armed forces in that light of protecting our freedoms and ways of life, because I feel like that perpetuates the reason why people go into the military and become traumatized and come back And I believe that our system is the same one that then takes these benefits from them, because it's the same one that does empire throughout the world and causes pain and death. All that to say, I would like for us to consider taking out the second whereas, which speaks to the contributions and sacrifices of those individuals who served in the armed forces, have been vital in maintaining the freedoms and ways of life that we enjoy in our local communities. So I'd just like to offer that. And I understand that may not resonate with everyone necessarily on this council, but if it doesn't, I just want to let y'all know that's the sole reason why I wouldn't support this resolution.
Thank you, Sammy. So Sammy has offered a friendly amendment to the resolution. Barbara, as a mover, do you accept the friendly amendment?
I cannot.
Okay.
We've been through this through email.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the table then. Thank you, Sammy. Thank you, Barbara. No further discussion. We'll vote. All in favor of the resolution signify by saying aye.
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 All opposed signify by saying no.
No.
All right, the motion is adopted 6-1. Mr. Clerk. All right, thank you all. Just on this topic, Susan?
It is. I forgot to ask. I know we're putting a green light in Carrboro Town Hall, and I was actually going to, if it's not too late, ask if we could also have a green light at Carrboro Century Center and at the Public Works Department.
I encourage you, Madam Manager, encourage you to talk with staff about what options might be available for staff in addition to Town Hall, if that's the case. Thank you, Susan. All right, we'll move on next to announcement of upcoming meetings. Mr. Clerk.
Right. Good evening, Mayor, Council. Got a few meeting updates to go through. And since we're not having a board meeting next week, I'll do actually 2 weeks worth of announcements here. So, so first we have the Affordable Housing Advisory Commission. They'll be meeting October 19th at 7 p.m. here at Town Hall. The next one, the Board of Adjustment meeting for October 19th is canceled for this week. Climate Action Team meeting October 19th at 7 p.m. via Zoom. Planning Board meeting October 20th at 7:30 p.m. It's in person here at Town Hall in the boardroom here. Transportation Advisory Board October 20th at 7:30 p.m. and that's in room 109 here at Town Hall, which is just next door to the council chambers. Human Services Advisory Commission will be on October 24th at 6:30 p.m. and it is virtual. And then we have the Racial Equity Commission meeting on October 27th at 6 p.m. and it's at the Century Center in room 23. And then, of course, the next council meeting will be on Tuesday, November 1st at 7 p.m.
Thank you. I'll come to you in just 1 minute, Randy. Just want to note that this Saturday, and then you, Eleazar, there will be, well, let me back up and give you some context here. Several weeks ago, I issued a proclamation regarding the 75th anniversary of our local branch of the NAACP, which is being celebrated this month. There have been a number of events around the community. You've probably seen them advertised on social media and elsewhere. The sort of final event in that cycle is coming up this Saturday. I know a number of us on the council, as well as town employees, will be attending the gala for the 75th anniversary. And then what has been proclaimed as founding day for the branch is the following day, this Sunday, the 23rd. If I have those dates right. So I just wanted to highlight that for everyone and look forward to seeing everyone at the gala if you're able to attend. And I hear there are very few tickets left, so sign up if you can. I have Randy next and then Eleazar.
All right, on Thursday the 20th, the Chapel Hill Transit Partners are meeting. And I didn't know if you said this, Wes, but the Mayor Siles and myself and several of our staff are attending the intercity visit to Winston-Salem and Asheville. It's Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday.
Thanks, Randy. Eleazar.
The only event I wanted to highlight, and I don't know if this is appropriate, but it's early voting. It starts the 20th, right outside, right behind Town Hall in that little house, the auxiliary. So just want to mention that early voting starts on the 20th. Make sure you're making a plan to vote.
Great. Thank you very much. Good reminder. Important election. Susan.
Yes. I also, just as a reminder, since we won't be meeting between now and November 1st, that there's going to be lots of Halloween activities that are being organized by our Carrboro Recreation, Parks, and Cultural Resources Department, including a virtual pumpkin carving contest, carnival games, movie night, stories under the stars, lots of really fun things for all ages. So I just wanted to let everybody know you can get more information on our website. Thank you.
Susan. All right, we'll move on. Next item on our agenda is public comment, and we have several people signed up to speak. These are on matters not on the agenda. First, several people are signed up to speak on the Westwood Cemetery property on Fidelity Street. And then we also have another person signed up to speak about the Lloyd Farm property. So I'm just going to go in the order that I have people on the list here, and we'll start with Sherry Smith and then move on to Minister Campbell. Come on up to the podium. Welcome.
Thank you.
And Ms. Smith, just for you and everybody's, you can go ahead and go out there. We do ask that speakers keep themselves within about 3 minutes. That's our typical practice. So I'm going to have a timer on my phone and make a sound. Don't be alarmed. Be slightly alarmed, but not too alarmed. So I may stop you at that point and ask you to wrap it up.
Sure thing.
All right. Welcome, Sherry.
Thank you so much. Good evening, Mayor Damon Siles and Carrboro Town Council. My name is Sherry Smith, and I come before you to request that the Westwood Cemetery be expanded into the back upper portion of the cemetery, as well as that you all secure funds, resources to protect, secure, and close in Westwood Cemetery with a fence and/or a brick wall. As a native of Chapel Hill, the Chapel Hill Carrboro area, born and raised here, and I am a teacher, 30-year veteran teacher at Colbert Middle School. My mother, Daisy Mae Snipes Smith, and father, Marion Smith Jr., my maternal and paternal grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins, and other loved ones' physical remains lay resting in Westwood Cemetery in Carrboro. Though I know without a doubt that their spirit bodies are in heaven and in paradise, I'm very concerned about the upkeep, traffic, utterly disrespect, and vandalism that often occurs in the Westwood Cemetery. On many occasions, while visiting my parents at Westwood Cemetery, I have witnessed people walking their dogs through the cemetery, and often their dogs are urinating, pooping, and trampling over the graves of people, loved ones. I've also witnessed young people hanging out, drinking alcohol, sitting on the headstones, and partying with music playing extremely loud. This is not something that we really can control, but deers and wild animals also have easy access to the cemetery from the woods as well. And often come over, eat flowers, and just wander around. It just seems to be an utterly disrespect for our loved ones that, are deceased. But, it's pretty embarrassing, and for me, it was pretty alarming. On January the 22nd, 2020, my queen, my heartbeat, my everything, my mom transitioned to heaven after battling with pancreatic cancer for months. She was a longtime resident at Carolina Springs Senior Homes in Carrboro for over 20 years. On February the 1st, 2020, we laid her to rest in Westwood Cemetery. A few days later, while visiting her gravesite, I noticed that someone had vandalized her grave, and I called the Carrboro Police Department to report the crime. As you can see, this is what it looked like after the fact, and I'm going to move forward and show you some pictures of what it looked like a day before. So these are the beautiful flowers that we had purchased for my mom during her homecoming. And it really isn't about the flowers. It's the utterly disrespect, the simple fact that somebody vandalized her grave. The very next day, and when I called the Carrboro Police Department, they came out. They were pretty amazing, but they thought that maybe it was a deer that took part in just demolishing her gravesite, but I just truly don't think that was the case. So this is what it was after the fact. And one thing about me, as you can probably tell, I'm pretty emotional. My mom was my heart, number one. Number two, we are long-term standing citizens in Chapel Hill and Carrboro. I reside in Durham now, but I grew up in Chapel Hill. My brother Renzino Smith played basketball for Carolina, so there's a lot of history behind what we've given to the community. And it was pretty heartbreaking when I came out the very next day and saw what somebody obviously had done to vandalize my mom's grave, it was just something that, it took me a while to get over, number one. Number two, I was still grieving my mom. So I was just shocked. And at the end of the day, we can't control what people do, but what I'm requesting and asking you all to do is to consider finding the funds and the money, the resources or whatever to secure that area. Like my father, by the way, was buried at Chapel Hill Cemetery back in 1992. Before my mom passed away, she had a dying wish and she wanted to be beside her honey, as she called him, her husband, my dad. And so because Chapel Hill Cemetery was, all the plots were taken up, there was no more room, I had my dad's body removed from Chapel Hill Cemetery back in August of 2020, and I had him to, laid right beside my mom because that was her dying wish. So I say all this to say that, maybe once or twice a week, I'm always at the cemetery. Just to talk to my parents because I miss them dearly. And for those of you that still have parents that are still living, do what you can for them. Continue to love them, love up on them, and just honor them and worship them. And that's that, because once they're gone, that's it. So again, my concern is that it's like open season. Like people walk through and do whatever they want to do. I've seen young people, some of my students walk through the graveyard, hanging out on the headstones, and it's like this open season, and that's not the way it is at the Chapel Hill Cemetery. And so, again, I come before you because I'm concerned about that. Obviously, the disrespect is pretty appalling, number one. Number two, that should be happening. That should not be happening, excuse me. And also the simple fact that we're going to need some more plots. Unfortunately, people are dying, whether it's COVID, whether it's cancer, heart disease, or whatever. So we are going to eventually need some more plots in Carrboro. And so I'm seriously requesting and asking you, almost begging you guys, to open up that part that's right next to it, expand it and make that part of the cemetery, because we're going to need that. Dog parking, et cetera, is important. Don't get it twisted. Those things are important. But I think the fact that we value human life, and even after they're deceased and gone, it's a resting place for our loved ones. And that cemetery is the heart, the life, part of the big thing with Carrboro. So please do what you can to reserve that area and consider using some money to fund a fence, a wall, or something to keep that place safe, secure, and protected, because we do value our loved ones even though they're deceased.
Thank you so much. Thank you for
Okay,
sharing that
thank
with
you
us.
for having me. I appreciate you guys.
Appreciate you being here tonight. Minister Campbell, you're up. And after Minister Campbell, we have Ms. Clementine Self. Welcome. And as you know, we do the 3-minute rule, Mr. Campbell.
Thank you.
Just throwing that reminder out there.
Thank you, Mayor and councilmen. I just want to remind everyone the process that this board have gone through by hiring a consultant, looking at the site, and you already have received a report about the availability, the environmental impact. And so this piece of property that was earmarked for expansion of Westwood Cemetery should move forward. But I just want to remind you that in time of grieving, one of the things that help family to move forward and heal is the less stress of trying to find a place to lay their loved one to rest. And to remind us of the general regulation, according to the North Carolina Cemetery Act, Article 9, the General Statute, Chapter 65, Section 13.4, that the town of Carrboro pull some of their resources from. It said no person may engage in recreation activity in a cemetery. For purpose of this subsection, recreation activity shall include but not be limited to throwing a ball or frisbee, playing games, or engaging in sport activities. Running or jogging, picnicking, walking dogs, cats, or other animals, allow dogs, cats, and other animals to run at large, and other similar activities inconsistent with the use of a cemetery as a cemetery. See what I see. Westwood Cemetery is more than a green burial site. This is a living green space memorial that tells the story of how we involved. We as a society have become, the town of Carrboro has a living memorial that shows our society have overcome. We see the diversity of the history of this town. And we look, as we visit this site where our loved ones are resting, we can see the progress we have made. Therefore, let us sleep and let us keep the land as it was cited for as an expansion of the Westwood Cemetery, a living memorial. Do you see what I see? When you visit the cemetery and you look at the different of the diversity that lays or rests there. Time past, it would not have been. But we have grown as our society have come to a place where we should have understanding and love and compassion in our hearts. One of the most devastating things is when a family loses a loved one is laying them in a restful and peaceful place. Westwood Cemetery fit that description,
Thank you,
but
Mr.
it's
Campbell.
local. Can you imagine have to drive an hour away to bury your loved one and then come back? How often will we go visit our loved one? We know that they are not there, but the opportunity to vent, the opportunity to say, I love you and I missed you. Those are the things that we should consider.
Thank you, Minister Campbell. You're coming to the end of your time here. Go ahead.
As I sum it up, oh, let me rest as a voice comes from the grave. Oh, let me rest upon the pine trees and the smell of the dogwood and the pine scent. And the morning rise of the sun upon my headstone and the quietness of the night. I lay. Come, my loved one, visit me as your pain goes away. Sure, now and then there may be some tears, but in time that will pass. But the visitor will see our progress, the quietness, the peacefulness, and how we have grown. And we have put segregation behind us. Though we die, memory grows on. Quietness, embrace our diversity. This is who we are. See what we see as we grow as a society. Come visit me. Remember the love that we once shared. Miss me, but let me go in time. I will be resting here at Westwood Cemetery, the living green burial memorial. Do you see what I see? A remembrance of how far we have come as a society and the acceptance of others in our community. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Minister Campbell. It's good to see you back in Carrboro Town Hall.
Oh, yeah.
It is a veteran.
All right, Ms. Self, welcome. It's good to see you back in Carrboro Town Hall.
Thank you. To the board, to the town council and the mayor, good evening.
Evening.
I had an experience with the cemetery recently. My youngest son, who was only 49, he passed May 31st. And when I came out to look for a grave plot, Mike Thompson was the one that carried me. And I looked at his computer, and he only held up 5 red flags of little arrows of where spaces were available. And when I asked him, I said, you mean to tell me that all of these plots that are empty, there's nowhere else for me to look except along the tree line where there's lots of erosion? I said, these graves are going to wash away. and we'll be looking like New Orleans and other places with caskets and running down David Road and Jones Ferry Road. He said, well, this is what we have. So I was the previous speaker spoke, I didn't expect my son to die at that age and at that time. And so I was too emotional to really get into it with him. But I kept questioning him, and his answers were very short, nonchalant, and in that manner. So I accepted what he gave us. However, I've even considered having him removed, because when I went back 3 days later, after it had rained, I could see his whole vault. There was no dirt. All the dirt had washed away. And that was, I'm sorry to get emotional, but that was just not acceptable. So you need to, I'm not going to repeat what they've already said because they covered everything I wanted to say. But I think you need to expand the cemetery as it is now. There's a greenway. There's no reason why we can't do that. But as Reverend Campbell said, we've come a long ways. We couldn't even walk across the railroad track in Carrboro. But to live in Carrboro, pay taxes for over 40-some years, and we should have a decent place for our loved ones to rest. We don't ever know when it's going to happen. I would have never thought that I would outlive my child. But God knew best. And the expansion should take place, as well as doing something soon about the erosion that's taking place along the tree line. And when I looked at the grave sites out there, a lot of them look like me. That whole tree line looks like, I knew half of the people most of the people out along that tree line. I've either taught them or they lived in our neighborhood. There are Chapel Hill people and Carrboro people who've been here all their lives. And that land was donated over 70 years ago. So we've come a long way, but we still have a long ways to go. And I appreciate your time because, like I said, I don't want to repeat what they've just said because they covered a lot. So thank you for your time, but do take what's been said tonight into serious consideration and know that, yeah, people come who rent in Chapel Hill and Carrboro, but think about the taxpayers that's been paying taxes in this community and in this county for years.
Thanks for being with us tonight. And I know we've heard a few comments. First of all, I'm very sorry for your loss myself. And I know we've heard from a couple of folks tonight already, Anita, about some of the conditions at the cemetery. One of the things we heard about in our last session on this topic was some improvements that the staff has already identified that need to be addressed and that the council has agreed need to be addressed. And those include some of the issues that you've raised about the drainage of the water, and just so those are things that the staff has told us that we need to deal with. So we expect some items to come back to us relatively soon from staff to get some of that done. So thank you for raising that up. All right, we'll continue on the list of folks who have signed up to talk on the Westwood Cemetery property. We have two more. One is Mr. Trimble and then Mr. Proctor. Okay, it's fine with me. Bob, come on up. Welcome.
Yeah, hi, I'm wrestling with my mask. Hi, thanks, Damon. The Davy Graveyard will soon run out of plots. Last week, a soft pause was not clearly described. We should honor the cultural traditions of longtime local families as much as possible, while preserving all of this central green space for the future generations of stressed out, hardworking hospital residents who find solace in it. Pausing planned sales for months while continuing to sell at-need plots would give you more time to make decisions while having little impact upon families who prefer Davy. Town code provides for planned sales to grandchildren who have not yet been born. During a soft pause, at-need sales would continue for deceased Carrboro plus Carrboro adjacent residents. Carrboro adjacent means anyone who lived within 2 miles of Davy and Fidelity within 5 years of death. This would include Northside. Meanwhile, instead of completing each planned sale 100%, Public Works would form a wait list with deposits. After new policy has been formed, the then qualifying families would complete their purchases. New policies could steer the remaining Davy plots to families most connected to the Davy graveyard. Why should Carrboro sell at a low price to a healthy Pittsboro resident with no kin buried here? I think there are a lot of things we could all agree upon. Of the remaining plots, blocks of the remaining plots could be sold to local funeral homes for resale to longtime local families with connections to Davy. Meanwhile, 3 beautiful acres, only 5 minutes out on Jones Ferry, could be bought and used only for at-need traditional burials at first. The local funeral homes would have first crack at the best parts of those 3 acres, and it's literally only 5 minutes. I've timed it. $90,000 for 3 acres is nothing for these folks. You could plan your own cemetery. Such a pause later it could provide decades of location continuity to families as burial practices evolve. As Ms. Haven O'Donnell pointed out last week, every cemetery has a cutoff point. Such a pause would be policy neutral. You could decide to change nothing and to expand the graveyard into our meadow. Last week, one of you asked how long it would take to plan to consume our meadow. Another counselor suggested public hearings about cemeteries in general. The comprehensive plan, $180,000 over 18 months, said the community should discuss the fate of the Fidelity green space. But the remaining plots might last only 18 months. Meanwhile, these plots should not be sold to random strangers who might not use them for decades, if ever.
Thank you, Bob. All right, almost right on time there. Appreciate it. Finally on the list is Mr. Trimble. Come on up. Sorry, lost my place there.
Good evening, Mayor, council members.
Welcome.
My name is Quay Trimble, and I live at 119 Fidelity Street. I've lived there since 2018 with my son, Bodie. I'm currently the HOA president of the Village Square Townhouse community, and I also volunteer at the Interfaith Food Council and the Eco Village called Common Ground, both located in Orange County. I'm not very good going off the fly, so I made some notes. So I'm speaking today in reaction to an article that was posted online by WRAL titled "Carrboro Municipal Cemeteries Running Out of Space." After reading this article, it became apparent to me that from my point of view, and many others who I have spoken to in the community in Carrboro, that this is more about the Fidelity and Davy Street neighborhoods losing open green space and not about those neighborhoods gaining graveyard space. What I would propose to do with the existing green space meadow is to develop a quiet, respectful plan that serves the community and their immediate needs. From my perspective, the only angle that should be considered is that of public health. I hope that everyone in this room is aware that there is a direct correlation between health and income. According to the 2016-2020 American Community Survey 5-year data estimates, Census Tract 107.07, which is where the Davie Street graveyard is currently located, the median household income is estimated to be $40,000 annually. In contrast to other census designations in Carrboro that contain open green space, Census Tract 107.05's median household income is estimated to be $73,000 annually. And Census Tract 107.01 median household income is estimated to be $111,000 annually. An idea I would like to highlight is that of an urban farm that also includes a community garden and open green space meadow. According to the WRAL article, expanding the Westwood Cemetery into Zone 4 would mean the town of Carrboro stay in the graveyard business, when the only right thing for the town to do is to not expand the cemetery and to invest in the health of the low-income families that make the Fidelity and Davie Street neighborhoods their home. Due to the rise in the number of families that rely on organizations like Porch and the Interfaith Food Council, we know that food insecurity is a real issue, and it's not going away. You all may be noticing how little the dollar can buy at the grocery store these days. Now imagine your income cut in half. Taking action to serve our community by offering the Fidelity and Davie Street neighborhoods organic, nutritionally dense vegetables grown right here in the Carrboro urban farm would offset some of the costs for the families and allow organizations like Porch and Interfaith Food Council to work within their established budgets and to offer higher paying salaries. A community garden and open green space meadow for picnicking or for friends and family to gather outside of their homes, to commune with nature and to observe and participate in where and how food is grown not only puts smiles on people's faces, but helps to reduce the day-to-day stressors that will lead to poor health if it's not addressed. An urban farm that also includes a community garden and an open space meadow would be an investment in the health of lower income populations that would cost the town a fraction of what's been spent in other Carrboro open space parks.
Sorry, we're getting to the end there.
In addition, my idea would support the town of Carrboro continuing to ensure that all people have equitable access to parks and open space. Thanks for your time.
Thanks for being with us tonight. Next up to speak, I have Julian Sereno. Welcome.
Thank you.
Come on up. You have about 3 minutes to speak with us.
I don't think we need that much.
Okay.
Anyway, thank y'all for hearing me, and this is the first time I'm sharing this with anyone, but here goes. But my name is Julian Sereno. I've lived in Carrboro since 1983 at 213 Simpson Street, my current address since 1986, which is, so it'll be 36 years I will have lived there on November 1st. And I'm talking about some thoughts about Lloyd Farm. Now, the first one concerns the swimming pool there. I would like to propose that it be open to members of the entire community for a small fee. And I would, of course, the folks who live at the senior center there and any other properties would, get in for free because they live there. But I think it should be open to everyone. But to make it good for everyone, I think they should redo the footprint and have a shallow pool for senior aerobics, a water slide for young people to splash around in, and then a big pool for serious swimmers to do laps in. And what I'm talking about is what they have at Meadowmont right now. And now I haven't been there since the pandemic, but it used to cost $7 to go in and spend the day there. And I would think it'd be wonderful if you could do something like that for the Lloyd Farm. Anyway, and it would also, I mean, I'm going to say it would be a great asset to the community, the whole town, and it would be a boon to merchants also, particularly if you had a cafe or a restaurant or something like that. So, anyway, the other thing is about traffic calming in Barred Owl Creek, and I'm going to suggest I live on Simpson Street. And for some years, there have been 2 traffic humps there, and they've worked somewhat. In other words, Simpson Street is a big cut-through street, and they'll go to one hump, slow down, speed to the next one, go over it, and keep going. And it's so I'm a pedestrian, avid pedestrian. It's so narrow that 2 cars and a human being cannot fit at the same point. So it's really important. So what I'm going to suggest is you build many more humps on all the streets, so it's pretty much impossible to go faster than 25 if you go through there. Now, in the case of Simpson Street, it's about 0.4 miles from West Main Street to Hillsborough with 3 stop signs. And if you speed dangerously or you drive the speed limit, the difference is going to be less than a minute in how long it takes you to get across there. So, I mean, it seems just sort of common sense, and it's also fairly cheap. So anyway, that's what I have to say. Thank you all for your time.
Thanks for coming to Town Hall tonight. Appreciate it. And Madam Manager, thanks, Julian. I assume at some point in the probably not very near future, we will have an opportunity to see the latest developments at the Lloyd Farm. Just so I'll be interested in that opportunity for others like Mr. Serrano to speak. And he left, though. I was going to mention the opportunity to talk about traffic calming, but I'll skip it. Thanks to everyone for coming out tonight. Again, appreciate hearing from you. And we'll be learning more on all of these topics, actually, pretty soon. Thanks. Thanks, Sherry.
Good night.
Okay. Anita, we'll move on to the consent agenda, please.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. 3 consent items are on the agenda this evening. 1, the approval of the April 5th, 2022 meeting minutes. Number 2, a request to authorize the town manager to execute a memorandum of agreement to accept transportation demand management grant funds for FY 2023. And the 3rd one, the approval of contracts for executive search firm services and special inspections for the 203 project.
Thank you very much.
I'll move item 1 and 3.
Hold on to number 2.
Yeah.
Is there a second to
Second.
approve 1 and 3? That's here by Barbara. So moved by Sammy, seconded by Barbara with the approve items 1 and 3 on the consent agenda. I chose this very moment to put a mint on my mouth. Smart move there, Mayor. All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And all opposed, say no. Matter passes unanimously. Okay, item number 2, Sammy.
Yeah, I just want to thank staff for your thorough response to the email I sent out yesterday. Just a follow-up question. I'd still be interested in hearing, it's mentioned in the email that that we collaborate with Chapel Hill on activities, and I just want to get a sense of what those activities are specifically, because we know what the activities are for Carrboro, but I just want a sense of what the joint activities are with Chapel Hill that Carrboro benefits from. If that could be provided at a later time, I'd appreciate it. And just generally wanted to thank staff for ramping up TDM action. It's double the funds that we've received in the past over 2 years, and it seems like there may be capacity to double that even further. So looking forward to staff thinking about what those activities might look like. TDM is one of the lowest hanging fruit climate action transportation things that we could do, and is included in our climate action plan as a big opportunity. So I look forward to us further exploring those opportunities. Having said that, I'll move item number 2.
Is that a second, Randy?
I'll second, but I also have a comment, some questions.
Moved by Sammy, seconded by Randy, that we approve item number 2. Randy, go ahead.
Yeah, I also want to thank staff for the work on this, and I appreciate Sammy's questions and the responses that staff had given. Some folks in the community have been asking regarding the transportation demand, the funding, if we can work with Chapel Hill to expand alternative transportation in biking for seniors and folks who are differently abled. In other words, are there funds for trike bikes and folks who have balance issues? And that question was asked of me, and I didn't know whether or not the program would include a bike access type program. So that's the first thing I wanted to ask, and I don't know whether Trish can answer that or.
I wonder if this is, along with the question that Sammy asked, something we can get some more information on
Okay.
in follow-up to
That'll
the
be
email.
fine.
Okay.
And I also just wanted to find out, I serve as a delegate to the Triangle J Council of Government, and one of the things that's not talked about too often is how we can work within our individual programs to cross-pollinate programs with programs across the region. So, for example, helping folks to carpool and get from, let's say Carrboro to Durham, to go to DPAC events or something of that nature. Because I know a lot of folks would prefer to carpool or to share in a regional minibus that would accommodate groups of people. So I don't know what kind of conversation is happening that way, but that's one of the things that I would hope can be created, at least the conversation, and possibly our funding could go to explore that. So that's it.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much, Randy. So it sounds like, Anita, we have some interest in hearing more from staff about Sammy's question regarding how these funds are used to support specific programs, particularly in Chapel Hill, because we've gotten information about what happens in Carrboro. Randy had a question about mobility and access programs for elders and differently abled folks in the community, and whether these funds support that kind of work, and also similarly whether it supports or could support work with coordinating with regional partners on alternative or microtransit programs. All right, thanks to you both. All in favor of approving this item, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Matter passes unanimously. Okay, Madam Manager, back to you.
Yes. The next item is a public hearing. A public hearing for consideration of a minor modification to the Perry Place Special Use Permit, a project at 800 and 802 Merritt Mill Road. The purpose of this item is for the modification that would allow NCDOT to complete right-of-way improvements within the Merritt Mill Road corridor. And we have Marty Roop providing a brief presentation.
Good evening, everyone.
Welcome, Marty.
Thanks. Yes, it is a brief presentation, and we'll see if there are questions. I won't repeat the topic since our manager did, but again, it's at 800 and 802 Merritt Mill Road. Just briefly, the March 15th meeting, you called a hearing, and here we are tonight for the hearing. Chapel Hill is considering the same request. As a brief reminder, this crosses the jurisdiction. Half of the units, 24, will be in Chapel Hill, and half, 24, will be in Carrboro. So we've coordinated with Chapel Hill all along and are making our best efforts to continue doing so. So their hearing will be open tomorrow night, approximately 24 hours from now. The original plan, simply put, for both jurisdictions, does show a bike lane that would take some of the property, the CASA property, in order to add a bike lane to the cross-section of the road. Recent discussions with DOT, we realized that they were getting ready to design and do a repaving anyway, so we started talking about Can we kind of just all come together and agree upon a design that ideally will incorporate bike lanes into the existing cross-section, the existing width of the cross-section there? So that there's an analysis being done right now by a consulting team, expenses being shared by both jurisdictions to look at that, and a December deadline, and Trish or Tina can help me with more precise dates if needed, but we should know by December whether that is going to, what that ultimate design will look like. So Chapel Hill, by way of their process, was required to call a public hearing, so we've done the same. And we'll see if anyone's here to speak on it. The Chapel Hill process calls for them to have a November 15th, or excuse me, theirs will be November 16th, one night after ours, anticipated action night when they will actually vote. So the staff's requesting or suggesting that you just kind of hold the public hearing open, and we'll see between now and November 15th if we have any more certainty or clarity on what that final design will look like. And I do have just a couple of images just for reference if needed. This is what was originally approved, and you can see the bike lane on kind of the back side of the sidewalk here. I've zoomed in some here. And then the new revision just simply shows it as not there. So, and I just have a couple of images of what the road looks like right now, just in case you want to discuss it at any length. We have provided the resolution if you want to just be, vote and be done with it tonight, but our suggestion is that you hold it open until November. And Rachel Eberhard is here from CASA if you have questions for her.
Great. Thanks so much, Marty. And Rachel, thanks for being here. We got your email this evening too, so you promised to be here and you showed up. So I didn't see you signed up to speak. Did you want to add anything, or were you? No, I figured I'd just be on hand for anything. Great. And I don't have any other members of the public to come speak tonight on this, unless anyone here. I see a staff in the room. So Sammy, it looks like has a question. Go ahead, Sammy, and then Susan.
Yeah, thanks, Marty. I'm glad this can happen for CASA. It seems like major savings. My question has to do a little more about the design specifics. The original design was the bike path was behind the sidewalk. Is that correct?
Yes.
The sidewalk is still
Let me check myself on that. Actually, it would sit in front of the, if you can kind of see the detail,
like
in
between
front
the
of,
road and the
yes.
sidewalk.
So the sidewalk would be further back, and
So the DOT design is going to be very similar to this.
yes, ideally it will be, yes. Just squeezed into the existing width of the cross section.
Okay, so I guess what I'm getting at is this question of opportunity for a barrier, because one of the ways in which we can encourage more biking is for people to feel safe on the bike paths, and feeling safe is optimized when there are physical barriers. And so if we're squeezing in a bike lane, are we missing that opportunity? And I guess the related question is, would it be possible for the DOT to design on the property that CASA was going to donate anyway, so that we could achieve the opportunity to create a barrier for the bike lane at some point?
Okay. I don't know if Trish or Tina want to speak to that with a response, or if we should just take that under consideration and see what.
Sure. I mean,
what can be done.
If you could just take that under consideration, that's ultimately what I want y'all to do.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay.
Sounds like a good input for what will be hopefully the continued public hearing.
Yes. Thanks.
Thanks, Sammy.
Just one more point. Sorry. Another point that comes to mind is it does sound like there's some timing with DOT that they're imminently about to do the resurfacing. Is that correct?
Well, finalize the design. The resurfacing wouldn't be for springtime, probably. Tina, do we know? We'll have to check.
Okay, so I guess this is a little more complex, given that there's a project that we want to help out. And I just wanted to get to the point of making sure that we are addressing opportunities for complete streets with resurfacing with enough time, so that we don't find ourselves scrambling last minute. It was just another.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sammy. Next I have Susan and then Barbara.
Thank you. Hi there, Marty. I just wanted to say I've had an opportunity to be seeing the CASA project over the last few months. I drop by, maybe once a week I get to see it, and it's been so exciting seeing. Actually, Barbara and I were there at one point, but seeing it, week by week, making progress here. So it's been really fun to see this coming together. which brings me to my question, which is about the timing. So this was really my only concern was the NCDOT's approval timeline is scheduled to occur at the end of 2022 at the earliest. Have they said at the latest?
Is your
Trish,
concern,
do you know?
Susan, like impacts on the timeline of the Perry Place project?
I'm just wondering, it sounds like the certificate of occupancy, I guess that means when folks can actually be moving in. That's going to be early 2023, so it would just be a shame if, NCDOT doesn't always go according to schedule. So it would just be a shame if folks were ready to move in, but still waiting on these improvements.
So that was more directed to CASA rather than staff and DOT. I will say, and I can't speak for Chapel Hill in this regard, but under Carrboro's process, if we do reach a situation where they have not made a decision yet, it's still pending, under Carrboro's process, we could bond for it and hold some amount of money until that decision is made. We did discuss that as an option, and I can say that's more difficult in Chapel Hill under the terms of their ordinance, but we can take that into consideration as well, perhaps as we move towards November and just see where we are.
Mm-hmm. And does NCDOT ever prioritize projects when it would be something like this, where families are ready to move in and things are just being held up by them?
Let's see if Tricia or
Yes.
Tina want to speak to that. The two of them have been consulting with DOT, not me directly, so.
So I think I think there's a couple parts to this answer. DOT bundles these resurfacing projects, and so they put together a schedule that's about 4 or 5 years out, and then they bundle out contractors. So the last question about whether DOT would adjust their schedule based on us, probably not.
Mm-hmm.
That said, the important information I think will come when we are at a point in the capacity analysis, which is the first step to determine if the bike lanes can be added. Once we know that information, which we should know later this fall, then we will have the information we need for CASA to know whether we can remove this requirement. So the actual timing of the resurfacing isn't quite as important with regard to making this decision for the permit.
Thanks, Tina.
Thank you, Tina.
Next I have Barbara and then Eleazar.
I have my answer.
Thanks, Barbara.
I was just reading that, but I did just want to briefly mention how exciting it is for the $200,000 cost saving. I'm really excited about that. But at the same time, we're still doing the needed street and transit improvements, through DOT. So it's real exciting to save that much money for this project.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you,
Eleazar.
Mayor.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. The only question I had, and I also want to echo the fact that it's awesome that we're saving some money and getting some stuff done. Well, not we, projects are saving money, so getting some stuff done. And I haven't had the opportunity to say how grateful I am for this project to be a thing in the first place. So thank you for your work on that. My only question is, whether or not the improvements are done by the end of the year, but by the time that we want them done, and obviously DOT is DOT, and that wouldn't prevent anyone from moving in, correct? I mean, we would still be able to, or not we, but folks would still be able to move in. We would still, folks would still be able to occupy the space. It just means that the bike lanes and the adjustments will be done after folks are already living there.
That's correct. And again, to repeat what I said earlier, under Carrboro's, the way we operate here, we could just hold a bond for some, not yet determined amount of time. And if we find ourselves in a situation like that, I can only imagine Chapel Hill will figure out a way to make it work too. I just know from our discussions with them that a bond was not a simple solution over there.
All right, that was it. Thank you.
Thanks, Eleazar. Thank you, Marty.
You're welcome.
I'd like to entertain a motion to continue this public hearing until November 15th. Is that right, Marty?
Yes.
All right, by Danny. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Randy. to continue this public hearing to November 15th. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Matter passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Rachel, thanks for sitting with us for a little while. We are too. I think almost all of us have had an opportunity to tour it, and I encourage council members, if you haven't yet had an opportunity, give Rachel a call. She emailed us with her. She has her number there in the email. And yeah, it's a really great looking project. It's really far along too. All right, Madam Manager, other matters.
Right. Under other matters, an update on implementation of the Town of Carrboro updated bike plan. The purpose of this agenda item is to provide a status report on implementation of the town's updated bike plan with a focus of the 5 priority projects. There is no action required tonight, and Trish McGuire will provide an update. No? Okay.
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 Great. Thanks, Trish. Tina, you're back. So, Tina, you have 3 minutes. No, I'm kidding.
Soft 3 minutes.
Off 3 minutes.
Good evening, everyone. If you don't mind, I made what I think is an improvement to my presentation, so I'm going to give you a different one. Okay. Good evening again, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity to give you this update. It's always really rewarding, I think, for staff when you're working on a project that a lot of people are really interested in, and I think this is one of those. And I also want to do a little shout out for this great photo of our kind of community ride on our first protected bike lane. So, kind of at a glance, where are we? So we have our original bike plan, which was adopted in 2009. We have our updated bike plan, which technically was adopted in January of 2021, which the focus really was to do a check-in with the community as to our priorities and to have an opportunity to implement updated design techniques, the use of green pavement markings and other things of that sort. All of this was reconfirmed as part of Carrboro Connects, which was adopted the following year. So we've had some questions about the steps toward implementation and where we are with implementation. I know you all received some questions, so I'm going to do my best to incorporate some of the answers or most of the answers throughout the presentation. As you read through the plan, the projects that were identified are noted as being conceptual in nature with regard to kind of the feasibility of the design as well as the costs. So one of the first things that we need to do as a staff is do a check-in. Are the costs accurate? Are they current? We typically use DOT's estimator. They have an estimator tool for this, and we always reach out to the town engineer to make sure that our costs are on target. We always have to look for funding sources. You all have been very generous at the last meeting of adding some funding to the bike plan. For those of you working with transportation planning, some of these projects are pretty expensive, big ticket items, and so they involve federal funding and funding from a number of sources that are often cobbled together for a single project. We try very hard to work with our finance director to schedule these projects in a timely manner. So that the amount that's coming from the town is reasonable. And now, thanks to, in large part, we started looking at race and equity with the bike plan, but we really did our deep dive with the comprehensive plan, applying new lenses for race and equity, climate action, and of course safety as we start to look at Vision Zero a little bit more deeply. We had a question about the use of some of these conceptual tools. Here's an image from Street Mix. Remix is another similar kind of a tool. These things are great. They're great for pictorial images when you go out into the public to start talking about what things might look like. they're just not sufficient. They're not sufficient in terms of accuracy to really be used for an official design or a plan, particularly related to DOT projects. They just don't have the accuracy to make sure you're covering all the dimensions in the lane properly. Now the big focus, where are we with our priority projects? We talked about a lot of these at the last meeting. So we'll just go down the list real quick, and I'll see if I can hit some of the questions that came from our callers. So with the first project, the Homestead Road side path and crosswalk, we have heard, and I'm sure you have too, an interest for this, and particularly for safer crossings for bike ped. There's not sufficient infrastructure to put a crossing. There's not receiving infrastructure on both sides of Homestead Road at this point over at Stratford and Homestead Road, or pardon me, the entrance to Lake Hogan Farms or from Burgundy Lane. So that option isn't an immediate choice for us to move forward with right away. So we put forth as a potential ARPA project to at least get the crossing at Claremont, because there is sufficient infrastructure where you could just go ahead and add the signal. The other pieces are pretty much in place. Working with DOT, we had an opportunity to connect with a consultant to get pretty current figures for the different components, and so we used those to come up with that estimate. Having said that, there's been no official design work, so that would be the next step. You know, we received kind of the funding was earmarked, so to speak, at the last meeting. The next step would be to reach out most likely to our town engineer, or to seek other engineering services to begin that next step of design. I think that covers enough of that for now. With regard to some of the other improvements, we have long been awaiting NCDOT to complete their ADA ramp improvements. That work is now underway. We've had some good communication with DOT. My understanding from them is that the consultants that they have hired, and again, they hire these consultants to do bulk projects, often in more than one jurisdiction. The contractor is doing the work in clusters. So we don't know the exact schedule for individual locations, and frankly, I don't think DOT does either. That's work that we will, it's kind of a pleasant surprise for us both. We know the locations of the project, but the exact schedule for that implementation, we don't know. I am pleased to say, and we have been reporting this in our regular transportation updates, we have been successful with DOT utilizing this project to get additional crosswalks in. This is work that goes beyond what was part of their programmed improvements of just ADA ramps. It was helpful for the town in two ways. One, to actually get the ramp, or pardon me, get some crosswalks in, but it also advanced the review of those crosswalks, because we were able to go through a number of them in one shot versus reaching out and analyzing each crosswalk location individually. So that was a time saver and I don't want to say a bonus, but I feel like I need to give DOT a shout out to say that they did this work for us, and we'll be seeing that come into place. The Shelton Street contraflow bike lane, we mentioned this, I think, in our last update in June. We've been working with the town engineer to do a design for this. This will end up being something a little bit more involved than a simple restriping. So it's some of the questions as to where are we with the design. It's a feasibility analysis. There's been a question of, should it just be a contraflow or perhaps a cycle track where there would be 2 lanes, one in each direction for bicycles in a particular section. It appears that there is sufficient right-of-way to do that, but it may require making some adjustments to what's there now in terms of kind of filling in ditches and so forth. So we are now at a point, I think, that we would want to start reaching out to surrounding property owners, so the school, the church, and others, and begin to do some outreach. Yeah, so again, a little bit more involved than just a restriping, and some funding would have to be identified for construction, depending on what the final design was, and then again, dependent on that final design would determine whether we would have to contract that out. Public Works typically contracts out even restriping types of work, so likely that would be something to be contracted out. Project number 4, This has been identified as very preliminary because this is in the plan, but it's not one that we've really started a deep dive in. And part of the reason for this, if you go back and you take a look at the assessment, I think it's on page 56, it makes some comments like travel lane width 10 feet, bike lane width 4 feet. I think that may be something we'll want to do a little bit of a deeper dive. Our bike lanes are typically 5 or 6 feet wide, so that's a little narrow. And oftentimes you have that extra little bit of give with, say, 10 or a 10.5-foot travel lane and perhaps a painted buffer. So you have that extra little area for bus side mirrors. You know, you have that extra little safe space. So I think that will be one that we'll want to spend a little bit of time really analyzing how best to move forward with that project. And it may end up being more creative striping, involving some green pavement markings and so forth. And then finally, number 5, Jones Ferry Road separated bike lanes. I think we're really excited about this project. This has been a pilot project with DOT to get those delineators in. It was not a small undertaking. And DOT is now ready to resurface that road. So we are working with DOT, one, to determine can we put the delineators back. We've done some survey work focusing on the bike community as well as folks who live around the area so that we can provide DOT with some survey data to say this is the feedback we've gotten. And we've expressed to them our interest of the town taking out the delineators and then the town putting them back in. That involves an encroachment agreement, so there's some steps involved with that. With regard to the westbound lane, the lane going out toward our more rural areas, that is the section that's identified in the bike plan as the 5th priority that we've not yet completed. The focus areas under the 54 bypass, and we've reached out to DOT to express our interest in doing something similar. Whether it is a suitable location to do a lane reduction and whether there's time to do a capacity analysis that would be needed to do a lane reduction, I'm not sure the answer to that. But we can certainly work with DOT, and we've pulled in the town engineer to see if we can simply narrow the lanes to get a bike lane to fit. That would, again, involve reaching out to Chapel Hill Transit and others. You know, there is the park and ride lot off of Jones Ferry Road. So we'd want to make sure that all of the users that need to use that corridor can do that. But this is certainly on our radar. You know, as those of you who follow the DOT resurfacing map, there's a user online map. We get updates from DOT with a chart and a reference to the map, and they don't always correspond. So sometimes there's projects that you see and you don't think are necessarily meaningful, and you have to go back and do a little bit more digging to figure out what's the full extent of that improvement, and this was one of those cases. Continuing on, as you read through the bike plan, the next wave of projects, of 5 priority projects, is what we're referring to as neighborways. We used to call these bicycle boulevards. The concept is essentially the same, which is a relatively low traffic road where with some relatively minor enhancements, whether there's some traffic calming devices or some better signage or adding sheriffs, that these can be improved and be identified as good places for cyclists to go. We have already, so of the 5 projects mentioned, the first 2 are really kind of the same project, you know, getting you from Homestead Road to Hillsborough Road by way of the neighborhoods. The missing link is really the break between Colfax Drive and Cobblestone. We've actually worked with the town engineer to complete a preliminary assessment of what would be involved with taking that 5-foot width wide sidewalk and making that into a 10-foot wide multi-use path. We did that, I think, in 2009 and reached out to neighbors and got kind of lukewarm feedback. You know, some people thought it was great, other people not really needed. And so with some other priorities coming up, we kind of put that aside, but we can certainly pick that one back up. Williams Street, again, that would be Williams and then the connection from what's really the Francis Shetley Bikeway all the way to Laurel to Town Hall, if you will. I think most of that is probably pavement markings and some signage. And as I have a little image here, we have certainly with our wayfinding plan identified some pretty snazzy looking signage to go with the town colors. It may be that we want to go with something more simple, simply the DOT kind of standard, this is a bike route with a number, a color coding system, or, other options that might be a little bit easier or faster for us to put in place. I have to add, if you wouldn't mind, as a side note, in preparation for this, I just Googled bike signage in North Carolina to do this. And after several efforts, I came to this, which is ironically, if you recognize it, in Carrboro, right behind Wendy's.
That's fun.
And then finally, for West Carr Street, we have envisioned some type of enhancement in that area to go with the 203 project. There probably isn't funding as part of that in the 203 and not in the South Greensboro Street sidewalk project, but that was thanks to you, that other ARPA project, to look at a potential 10-foot multi-use path that could connect all those things. Bikes taking Old Pittsboro Road, pedestrians taking South Greensboro, and something to, whether it's green pavement markings or something, to help show that connection east-west for cyclists. I think that's one of the ones that tends to be a little bit more hidden if you're not in the know. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. You've seen some of the STIP projects. They're big ticket items. They're certainly part of the bike plan. I do want to provide a little bit of an update for Morgan Creek. That project is now moving forward. We had a really great meeting with some of the neighbors over the summer, really good turnout. We've now made it to our first DOT review, so that is starting to pick up traction. The signalized pedestrian crosswalks likewise are moving forward. The sidewalk project, we've just touched on that with the multi-use path, the connection point there. So I think we've covered all of that. But again, the STIP projects are certainly part of the bike plan and the comprehensive plan. And again, I just want to emphasize the importance of these partnerships. We are a small government. We have limited staff capacity. We have limited funds. Opportunities for us to partner with DOT or with Chapel Hill really helps us advance more projects than we probably could on our own. We're seeing East Main Street really kind of come to its own, so to speak. I have to double check if that last little bit of signal work is finished, but green pavement markings in. We have a more narrow cross section, so our design is different than Chapel Hill, but I think we've gotten some very positive feedback from that. We've heard tonight about the Merritt Mill project that we're working in partnership with Chapel Hill. Another one that we are working on with DOT is looking at North Greensboro Street. That is also up for resurfacing, so there's a potential there to do a buffered bike lane on the portion, say, from about Southern States westward. We are looking at a potential capacity analysis for that other portion to see if there's anything we could do with that center turn lane to help get bike lanes in. We have redesigned the bike loop detectors. We're up at 75%. We are waiting to determine what will happen with that center turn lane on North Greensboro Street, and then we can finish the design for that project and move toward completion. Certainly for town resurfacing projects, we always work in partnership with Public Works, put sharrows out where we can, and do other things to help implement the bike plan. And we've talked about the ADA projects. So I think we've kind of hit the highlights. There's a lot of stuff going on. And here's where you can find the updates. So I think there's an update scheduled for November that will have a little bit more information in it. Kat Lazorka in the audience does a great job of working with us to push out information. And there are some places where you can find things for our viewers at home on the website, either with the story map or this great link that I just discovered where if you go to residents, there is a transportation option and it will take you right to the transportation project updates. And I think for all of us, we're always looking at ways to put together a better dashboard or some better way of helping people keep up to date. So I'll stop there, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Tina. On this last comment that you made, you mentioned there's a resource on the website today that kind of follows ongoing projects, including these transportation projects.
Yeah.
Can you give us a little bit more of a navigation to where that
How you
is?
get there?
You said you go to the link called Residents, the drop-down menu
Yeah,
Residents.
so
and
if
then
you go to, this is actually from the town, this is actually, I believe it's the front, I'm not using the right term. When you open the webpage, pardon?
Landing page.
Oh, thank you, the landing page. When you land on the landing page, you get to this, there's the titles, here we go, on the top, and the circle, going to the residents, there you'll get a drop-down menu, and the transportation page, the transportation label, I'm not using the right terms at all, will get you to this page, which is the transportation page, and that saves you going government, planning department, and so forth. It's a shortcut, and they're all listed with the, all the way down from when we started these. And I think the ongoing projects on the front page as well.
And so what's provided on that page that you're pointing us to is links to the most recent transportation project updates that
council.
staff has given to town council in our council meetings. Okay. And can you give us a sense of, in those regular updates, I'm not remembering right off the top of my head, but do they for each project tend to give like timeline or other kinds of information like that? Or does it just depend on the project?
It does depend on the project. We changed the format a little bit the last time to try to make it a little bit more of a table, because it seemed like for folks who had been following the project, maybe it was a little dry reading, it was a lot of duplication. So we're trying to streamline that a little bit so you can just jump to the new information. We are trying to be better about providing guidelines, or providing deadlines. I know that that's an interest we have heard from folks, so yeah. Yeah, we're trying to find that balance between not providing expectations we can't live up with, but still providing folks with clear information.
Randy?
Yeah, I just had a question. We all received an email from Ryan with a recommendation for a dashboard. Does this information on our website, does that meet the kind of dashboard recommendation that Brian is making regarding addressing each of the 5 projects and its progress?
Specifically for the bike plan? Right?
The bike plan, yeah.
We have not yet, but we certainly could add those projects into the story map, sure.
Yeah, I think that way folks in the community can track it, and rather than sending us emails, they'll know, and they'll have a good place to look. The other recommendation that Ryan made, which I think makes a lot of sense, is having, a point person, outside point person who might be overseeing, and I didn't know if there's going to be some conversation about that.
Susan?
Yes, thank you. Tina, I was going to just follow up on a couple of things that have been said so far. So, we've all had that experience of calling health insurance, and we get the message, you are in queue, and the wait will be approximately, 37 minutes. I didn't know if this work is conducive to something like that, maybe with a dashboard. But we do get these questions frequently. I'm dying to see this new crosswalk at Claremont. Do you expect it's going to be 2 months or 2 years? But if there was a way for people to get rough estimates on, we expect, the design will be completed, in March 2023, 67 days or whatever, but just kind of given a little bit more of that framework. Is this conducive to having something like that?
I think we can look into that.
I'm asking because first of it would be really helpful for us in terms of questions that we get, and community members interested in it, but also hopefully taking some of this off of your plate, because I know I probably drive people nuts sometimes with, somebody will reach out to me and I'm following up, trying to get a little bit more information on timeframes, whatever. So, hopefully it would be a win-win for all of us. But I think it would be really very, very valuable for a lot of people. Following up on Randy's point, knowing who's responsible for that next step. When there's a bottleneck, it can really help. I think some of the people who sent emails over the last few days, it was a really good point that when there's a bottleneck, it will help us know, sometimes maybe that means, hey, we need to reach out to so-and-so at Department of Transportation or what have you. It could sort of mobilize people to advocate, to find out why are things so slow. So that was another thing, just following up on what Randy said about how nice it would be to have these, who's responsible at this particular part in this process would be really helpful for mobilizing that advocacy.
Thank you, Susan. So, Tina, it sounds like you've heard some of us asking about this general topic of ways of providing timelines or some general sense of time estimates for projects, just so that people have a sense of, is this like tomorrow, or as Susan said, 2 years, whatever. But just able to have a better sense to be able to empower us to answer those questions when we get them, because we, as you know, get them frequently, but aren't always sure how to. We don't know what's all involved. You did a good job of laying out how for many of these projects there are these multiple points along the way that require pretty deep analysis and work. But we're not transportation engineers, so we can't answer those questions. One question I want to also ask was, and I know we're getting to our time on this item, but at MPO meetings we often talk about how especially some of the smaller jurisdictions in the MPO face this capacity issue, right? That and you mentioned that yourself, right? We have limited funding, we limited capacity to, and so just had to be mindful of that as an issue. And we've talked at MPO meetings before about this on-call. I guess they have a list of kind of pre-certified or whatever pre-approved firms that the MPO or its jurisdictions can work with to perform various transportation planning tasks, I take it. That's about as specific as I feel like I can get about it. But is that a tool that's available to the town if it comes to a project where we would like to get it off the launch pad and just needs some work to be done around, say, I'm thinking about one of the projects you mentioned where this just isn't one where we've had the time yet to get into a deep dive yet. Maybe we need to do a feasibility analysis. Maybe we need to do whatever. We just haven't been able to get to that yet. Is that on-call service available for that kind of work, potentially?
We have used the on-call service in the past to help select contractors for particular projects, for engineering services. I think that's something I think we're always open to look at things. I'm not sure I would necessarily consider it that it's an easy solution. There's always a management component for things, and maybe I'll just stop there. But there, as you notice, there's a lot of elements to things, and
some more food for thought then.
Yeah.
There sounds like some interest in, though, just some more information available to residents who go to this tool on the website, just sense of timeline, that kind of thing, that we can help just fill out some of that information. Barbara?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Tina, for the presentation. So I know for me, I know our community members are anxious for information and timelines and things like that, but I really appreciated the recommendations that you put in for consideration. You talked about opportunities to collaborate with DOT. You talked about rescheduling. You talked about the amount of staff time. It may involve more than one town department. I think all those things that were in this agenda item are really important to consider, as our community members continue to ask questions about, time frames and things of that nature. I don't know that would stop them from asking. But certainly I think they are important considerations. And I just wanted to add, because I felt like all that went along with the capacity question that we've been talking about tonight. So again, thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
If I might add one little tidbit, I think with DOT, the funding issues that they ran into put a lot of things kind of on pause, and then COVID came, and there are a lot of folks at DOT who are, I think, working remotely. There's a lot of folks who are actually part of consulting firms but work for DOT, and response time became much slower. There has since been a number of retirements, and so there's a lot of new people at DOT, which means there's a learning curve, but some of the new folks are much faster to respond, and so I think that we'll begin to see a little bit of an uptick in response times. And the challenge with giving a schedule for a transportation project is there's always a wrinkle. We had, case in point, the South Greensboro Street sidewalk. We had what we thought was a very clear schedule, great Gantt chart. We did not anticipate a water line replacement, and that was a slowdown. And it was hard to say to residents, we're going to give you a schedule until we really knew what the schedule was. We have since gotten that expanded scope. We're getting that updated. We're in the audit process now, so that's a big leap than we were several months ago. But once we have that information, we'll be able to have a realistic updated schedule, and we'll be able to share that with the community again. But it's challenging for staff because we very much want to, well, one, we want the projects to move forward, but we'd like to share a schedule, but one that's realistic.
Thanks very much, Tina. Danny.
Thanks, Tina. That point is really well taken, and just like literally for the document, suggestion for organization is for residents. It may be helpful even to like treat that as a designation, is projects within a timeline, and then I think what becomes helpful for the projects that don't have the ability to do that is just for residents to understand what you are waiting on. So I think if we're able to potentially group things into some sense of imminent, we are able to be accountable, and some sense of not. However that is, absolutely understand we don't want to be like too concrete, but I think residents would really like to understand movement toward concretion. So that's all. I really appreciate this update. It's obvious that you guys, the breadth of thought across multiple plans and multiple partnerships is evident here, and that your consideration for resident feedback anticipates even our own. So really, really do appreciate it.
Danny. One final note I'll make, and this is really for council members rather than for Tina, although it relates to something Tina said, which is an issue is always funding, right? Is that we have a role in our relationship with the manager every year to be talking with him about our capital improvements plan, how projects get prioritized in that plan, how the town and finance director are able to help us achieve those goals, right? So we have some work to do on our end to make sure that our staff have what they need to achieve these goals as well. So important. Tina, thank you very much. I don't think any action is requested by us tonight, so we appreciate the update, and we'll start publicizing the access to information on the website that you've shared with us tonight. Thanks, Tina.
Thank you.
Always on it,
Right. So we're a little behind our schedule tonight, but we're going to get through it. We've got a couple more items on the agenda, and we'll go back to the manager to get us going.
Request to adopt the 2002 Carrboro brand guidelines. Catherine Lazorko will present the item.
Welcome, Kat.
Hi. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Catherine Lazorko. I'm Communication and Engagement Director. And I'm here to present an update to the Carrboro brand guidelines, along with mainly Lane Worster from the Splinter Group. I'm just going to go over kind of the goals of where we're headed with this, and then Lane will take it over from there. Okay, the goals of this update. Of course, the original guidelines were adopted by the council in late 2013. These changes are put forth in order to accomplish some of these goals, one of which is to establish a government logo, which Carrboro doesn't really have in place now, and as well as secondary department logos for government communications. Another goal is to revise an interpretation section of the 2013 guidelines that permitted the logo to be adorned with additional elements. Examples of that might be if you have seen the stormwater logo, where things are kind of coming out of the O's and things like that. Another goal is to just revisit the use of the feel free tagline, and we're proposing that it's used for marketing and town values purposes rather than across the board. And that was a request from council for us to look at that in June. And then finally, we're establishing the Communication and Engagement Department as a resource for brand materials and information. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Lane Worcester, who's just coming from right down a couple blocks away.
Welcome, Lane.
Kat, am I just doing the right arrow to advance?
Yes.
Thank you. Mayor, Council, thank you for having me. My name is Lane Worcester, and I'm partner and creative director at the Splinter Group, a design and marketing company located just up the street. It's hard to believe that it's been nearly 10 years since we undertook the process of creating a brand, visual identity for Carrboro. That was an extremely immersive, interactive process that we approached with a tremendous sense of responsibility and accountability, knowing that we'd be living and working in the midst of our creation. After a long and thorough community engagement process, we developed a unique logo that defied traditional typography and presented the name of our town in a way that reflected its originality and creativity. It was something uniquely Carrboro. And though we created a simple guideline for how the brand was to be used, our key deliverables at the time were a website, an ad campaign, and other marketing pieces. Catherine approached us early in the summer about updating the brand guidelines and creating some design templates to ensure consistent representation of the brand in the town's use. We've worked closely over the last few months, and I appreciate Catherine's help getting us here. So tonight I'd like to walk through the proposed updated guidelines for approval so that we can move into the creation of templates for communication tools like business cards, letterhead, PowerPoint, etc. So just as an overview, the town of Carrboro is made up of various departments and divisions, and we're all part of the same organization. Every town employee is on the same team. And one of the best ways to show that we're on the same team is by using a shared set of branding elements, specific combination of colors and fonts, design shapes unique to our organization. Branding conveys that in spite of our many services, programs, and initiatives, all of us are working together towards the common cause of making Carrboro better. Residents and employees alike associate a specific look with the town of Carrboro, making our services, events, and programs instantaneously recognizable and coming from a single organization. That's what good branding really, really does. These brand guidelines are designed to help become a resource for departments when communicating from the town. And it's going to make it easy for all our constituents to identify town communications and ensure brand cohesion. So this is really all about consistency. It's about people not feeling that they have to reinvent the wheel every time. And by having a firm set of guidelines, it should make everybody's job easier. So the first thing we did to really shore up the way the brand can be used or should be used and will be used is to create what we're referring to as a government or town logo. So what we've done is we've taken our core creative mark and added Town of Carrboro NC beneath it to sort of solidify it, give it a sense of place, so that it's not just this interesting shape that people within our town know what it means, but communicates a larger picture. And this should be used as this new standalone mark represents the town government, and it should be used whenever the town is involved. As appropriate, all informational and formal material, including websites, uniforms, brochures, public information notices, signage, and collateral, should use the new government logo and exclude the town seal. This government logo and or town seal may be used for all official town communications. The town regularly uses promotional items such as pens, pencils, keychains, etc., and now it's the department's responsibility to ensure that vendors follow these new brand guidelines using this new proposed mark. We've also developed secondary logos that are used for different departments. These are available but not required for use by the departments. We would prefer using the general government logo, but the departments can use this as well. We developed 14 for the different departments that just have the sub-name of the department in a gray text beneath Town of Carrboro, North Carolina. The preference is the departments use the Carrboro government logo instead, but they're certainly able to use the department logos. But we should not use multiple logos when communicating. We shouldn't have the department logo, the town of logo, and the seal. Otherwise, we're looking like the back of a Fun Run t-shirt with a bunch of sponsor logos, which we want to avoid. Carrboro seal should be used when the town needs something to be a symbol of authority. This official seal is to be used on designated materials, official documents, checks, notifications, materials representing elected officials, proclamations, and resolutions. On townwide promotional materials, aside from this, signage, websites, etc., the Carrboro Town of logo should be used. The seal is not recommended for everyday design. And then the town seals are also trademarked for use for the police department, fire department, and general government, and they can appear on government vehicles as appropriate. Okay, we then have a series of variations of the logos that we're calling town values and marketing logos. These are various logos to use for different purposes to brand and express our community values. They can be used to promote special events, programs and initiatives, and business development, travel, and tourism. These were developed with a sense of creativity, enthusiasm, love for our community, and we can envision future customizations, but these interpretations must be receive the approval of the town before they can be used. And just I wanted to speak briefly about the marketing logo, which is It's Carrboro Feel Free logo. As part of our creative process, we conducted a 9-month campaign. As part of our development, this involved like 2 months of these Let's Talk Carrboro boxes that were placed all around the town, where we asked people a very simple question, which was, what makes Carrboro Carrboro? We spent the last several months after that distilling the different input that we got. And as part of our creative process, we not only developed the logo, but we worked on a tagline, which was, It's Carrboro, Feel Free. And that brand, that phrase, came out of this recurrent theme about the feeling of this town, where there was a sense of optimism, encouragement, a lack of judgment, a result being that people feel unencumbered here in Carrboro, and inspired to take risks, not in a dangerous way, but along lines of this, here things are more possible than they're not. There's more yes than no's, so that you could drop some of the things, some of your fears, the things that might be holding you back, and be brave. It feels weird to say, read something that is a tribute to me, but I did write it. It's about freedom from judgment and pessimism, and freedom to step up and be original, to be more than you thought you could be. It's not meant as an indulgent phrase. It's always supposed to convey hospitality in the same way that my grandmother would say, feel free to have another slice of pie. I've interpreted it as, let's do this, feel free, let's have at it. So as a positive expression of the possibility and the encouragement that our town provides through a general spirit of optimism that I think is at our core. This is more for designers to use, but we have broken down approved colors that are provided in the brand guide with PMS values, CMYK, and RGB for people that are using them for web, again, to ensure consistency of use. Here we're just showing some of the different examples of usage to be approved, where we show logo against a dark background. You're also seeing although at very low resolution, the way our new templates will be used for business cards for town employees. Again, coming up with a consistent look and feel that goes through all of those communication devices. As part of the general use standards, we always give a guideline for folks in case we're handing off the logo to somebody else to use that might be from a promotional products company or something, what they can and can't do with the logo, how to leave a proper space around it, not add a drop shadow, don't tilt it, don't take these creative liberties with it, so that we can all be proud of the way it's used and have that sense of consistency. And as part of this, we've also developed supporting typography that is used for print ads on websites. So there's just different fonts that we're encouraging people to use, again, for that same consistency. And then there are just some sort of policy things that go along with the adoption of the proposed brand guide in terms of more communications and specialty items and collateral. To protect a professional and consistent image, all town employees are encouraged to contact the Communication and Engagement Department for any guidance and access to communication materials designed to encourage consistency. This would be for things like email signatures, business cards, letterhead, report templates, and more. The use of the town logos by external organizations without permission is prohibited. Since the use of the town logo implies an endorsement, the town logo can only be used when the town is supporting, sponsoring, partnering, funding, or endorsing an external organization's program or event. The town is supportive of arts-related uses and the creative local economy. We request that when the town's logo is used by an external group, a proof for review and approval is sent to the Communication and Engagement Department. Questions should be directed to this email address. And then finally, the Communication and Engagement Department maintains digital resources for the Carrboro brand. Please contact the department for any of those materials. And one thing that's important to notice is as we refresh these brand updates, we will do so in a fiscally and environmentally responsible way. Any non-digital communication pieces that are not in exact conformance to this update can be used until they are ready to be replaced. This pertains to physical items like banners and tablecloths. Please considering ordering new business cards only when your supply has been depleted. Questions?
Elaine, thanks for coming up.
Of course. Nice
Thanks
to be
for
back.
working so closely with Catherine in our communications department on what I view as somebody who, in my day job, works in communications but doesn't get to often see this side of it, right? Which is the design side and the